My name is Stephanie, and I'm almost 40. I didn't plan a dramatic moment. I didn't rehearse a speech in the mirror or picture myself finally standing up and making them cry in front of strangers. The truth is, I've been the kind of person who swallows things whole and tells myself it's fine, because if I didn't, I wouldn't survive the day. But that Sunday at the picnic table, with the same park and the same familiar setup like we'd been doing this since childhood, something in me went quiet in a way I'd never felt before. Scott raised his beer and said, "To the ghost who pays for everything but still doesn't belong." My mom snorted, like it was the funniest thing she'd heard all week. Laura added, "Cheers to background money." I lifted my glass and said to the background money that just disappeared. Then I took a sip, opened my phone under the table, and hit freeze all accounts. 30 minutes later, Laura was pale, my dad was cursing, and Scott's rent payment bounced mid-toast. That picnic cost them a lot, and they deserved every dollar of it. They thought it was just another family Sunday. Same park we'd always used. Same checkered tablecloth my mom insisted on ironing. Same expectations. Stephanie will pay. Stephanie will clean up. Stephanie will be grateful we let her sit at the grown-up table even though she's almost 40. But this one was different. This one was expensive. I made sure of it. They wanted catering this time. Something nicer than hot dogs, Laura said in her group text. Scott voted for ribs and seafood because why not? They'd never pay for it. Laura offered to do the drinks and brought 3 bottles of generic soda and a 6-pack of light beer. My mom called me the night before, asking if I could pick up folding chairs because Dad's back was acting up again. I smiled when she asked, told her, "Yeah, sure, I'll take care of it." Of course I did. I always do. They know how to take, every single one of them. When my boyfriend packed his things and left, and my daughter was suddenly more of a memory than a presence in my day-to-day life, they didn't ask how I was doing. They asked if I could still help with Scott's move. When I picked up a second job doing warehouse shifts at night, my mom called to say their dishwasher stopped working. When I didn't answer right away, she texted me 3 times. I sent the money anyway. It's not like I was using it. I wear the same 3 shirts to work every week. I keep a small bag in my truck in case I have to shower at the gym. My Tacoma has a heater that only works when you're going 40 or faster. My boots are so worn the leather is separating at the toe. I don't buy anything, not for me. But I paid off their Kia. I covered the last 3 months of Laura's health insurance because she was between jobs again. I co-signed Scott's lease and paid the deposit even though he makes more than me and works less. So yeah, the picnic cost a lot. I hired a local barbecue truck, told them to add a service charge, gave a generous tip. I rented speakers, coolers, tables, told the rental place to add insurance, even though I knew nothing would break. All of it went on my card, and I didn't say a word. When we got there, everything looked perfect. Scott showed up in sunglasses and a tank top, acting like he was the one who put the whole thing together. Laura posted a photo captioned, "Fam Jam 2025, with 0 mention of who paid. Mom complimented the setup and told me it was so nice to see everyone giving back for once. I just smiled and nodded. Then came the moment. Scott raised his beer like he was proposing a toast at someone's wedding. He looked around like we were all in on some private joke. "To the ghost who pays for everything but still doesn't belong to us." Mom laughed. Laura clinked her cup and said to money from the past. And I said to the money from the past that just disappeared. I opened my phone under the table and pressed freeze all accounts. Joint checking, family Venmo, the card Mom used for groceries, all gone in 5 seconds. I kept eating my ribs. Didn't say another word. 30 minutes later, the cracks started showing. Laura tried to order more drinks and her card got declined twice. Scott got a notification from his bank about a failed rent transfer. Dad walked over to me, phone in hand, pretending to be confused. He asked if the bank was down. I told him to try again in the morning. They didn't understand yet. They thought it was some glitch, maybe fraud, something external. No one realized I pulled the plug. Not yet, but they would. This was just the prelude, the first turn of the screw. For once in my life, I wasn't going to be the quiet one. I wasn't going to be the family ATM. I was done playing nice. They thought they were humiliating me. What they didn't know was they had already lost, and I was just getting started. I didn't hear from them that night. Not one message, no thank yous, not even a dumb meme in the group chat. That told me everything. They were scrambling, maybe blaming the bank, maybe refreshing their apps. They probably assumed some fraud alert froze the accounts. I knew Laura would be the first to panic. Half her life runs on monthly subscriptions. Scott was probably too hungover to notice until the rent hit. Mom, though, she'd know. She always knew when something had changed. She just didn't always understand what it meant. By morning, the calls started. Laura texted first, just, "Hey, did you move some money or something?" Like we were partners in some business deal. I didn't respond. 10 minutes later, "My card isn't working. Can you check?" I didn't check. I already knew why. She tried calling twice, straight to voicemail. At work, I sat in the break room sipping burnt coffee while my phone lit up over and over. Dad called, then Scott. Mom left a voicemail that sounded like she was smiling through her teeth. I let it pile up. By noon, Laura emailed me. She never emails. Said she was genuinely concerned and asked if I was okay, which was her polite way of saying, "Fix this now." I wrote back one sentence. "The accounts are closed." I didn't elaborate. I didn't owe her one. Scott called next. He didn't bother with small talk. His tone was already climbing. His rent payment got rejected, and the leasing office was threatening to cancel his move-in if he didn't come up with another deposit by Friday. I told him he should have saved some of those beer money selfies for emergencies. He hung up. That afternoon, I went to his new apartment building, the same one I'd co-signed for. I waited in the leasing office while the receptionist called the property manager. I explained calmly that I was pulling my application and stopping the deposit. They said I'd be legally responsible if the lease was finalized. I smiled and told them to check the status. It was still pending. No lease, no commitment. I canceled the check before I left. Scott showed up at my house 2 hours later, knocking like a cop. I didn't answer. He stood out there for maybe 15 minutes pacing, trying to call me from his phone, then from someone else's number. When I finally opened the door, he was already yelling. He said I'd screwed him over, made him look like a joke, and ruined his new start. I leaned against the door frame and asked him what new start required my money to exist. He kept going, listing everything he thought he was owed, like he was reading from a script. I asked him if he remembered when I asked for help after my boyfriend left, when I couldn't sleep because I was working night shifts and crying in the bathroom at work, when my daughter was suddenly living far away and I felt like I was watching my own life through a window. He didn't answer. Then I told him to leave. He muttered something on the way to his car. Some insult he probably thought would land better. I didn't care. I watched him drive off in the same car I helped him fix last summer. Thursday, I got a voicemail from Dad. He said they'd been talking, and maybe it was time to get everything on the table. Said he wanted to work things out like a family, that maybe I'd taken things a little personally, but they were willing to have a real conversation now. He used the phrase mutual expectations, which sounded like something he pulled out of a business book. I didn't call back. Let them talk. Let them panic. Let them feel what I've felt for years. The isolation, the pressure, the weight of being useful and disposable at the same time. And the best part? This wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was still me being reasonable. They didn't know how far I was willing to go, but they were about to find out. They were trying to play it cool, but it was unraveling faster than they could patch it. Laura posted a story on Instagram, just a picture of her feet on a patio with the caption, "Some people show their true colors when it's inconvenient." It was vague enough for her friends, but I knew exactly who it was about. Scott posted a meme about fake family and tagged no one. Subtle, right? What none of them knew was I'd already taken it further. The same day I froze the accounts, I also logged into the utilities portal. I'd been paying the electric and water bill for my parents' house since 2022. They always said they'd pay me back when things stabilized. Guess what never stabilized? So I canceled the autopay, deleted the card on file, marked it as moving out. 2 days later, my mom texted me. Did something happen to the utility payments? I got a shut-off notice. I left it on red. It wasn't cruel. Not really. I gave them years of my life. I paid bills while they traveled. I skipped dentist appointments while they redecorated. I sold my coin collection to help cover the tax bill. Dad forgot to pay on time, and I never threw it in their faces. Never once made them feel small for needing help. But they made me feel small regularly, like when Scott said I couldn't hold down a man, or when Laura laughed at my shoes and asked if I was starting a minimalist phase, or when Dad said he was glad I didn't have my daughter full-time with the hours I work. That one stuck. So no, I didn't feel bad when I got another message from Laura on Sunday asking if I had canceled her Hulu account. I had, along with the shared Netflix and the phone plan I was still paying for, because she claimed the family bundle was a better deal. She said she was locked out of everything and it was childish. I replied, I agree. Then silence. By Monday, they started switching strategies. Guilt gave way to bargaining. Mom called and left a message saying she missed how things used to be. Said she didn't want money, just to talk. Then she asked if I'd consider restarting the card just for 1 month since their new payment method hadn't gone through yet. Scott texted me that same day. I know we've had issues, but this is overkill. Laura went quiet, but I saw she updated her LinkedIn with a job she didn't have, probably trying to get someone else to co-sign a new apartment. Good luck. I wasn't angry anymore. That was the strange part. It felt like cleaning, like taking out a pile of trash that had been rotting for years. One bag at a time until the air started to clear and the floor wasn't sticky anymore. I started cooking real food again. Even bought new shoes, not expensive ones, just something that didn't squeak when I walked. It felt absurd to buy something for myself. I stood in the store holding the box for 20 minutes before I let myself go to the register. That's when I realized what this really was. It wasn't revenge, it was subtraction. And I wasn't done yet. By Thursday, I expected more noise. Maybe another guilt-laced voicemail. Maybe another weird Instagram story from Scott pretending he was unbothered. But what I got instead was something I never saw coming. Laura in person, on my porch. She hadn't been to my place since my breakup. I knew it wasn't a social call. No one in this family ever shows up without a reason. She had sunglasses on like she didn't want to be recognized, and in her hand, a thick yellow envelope. She didn't ask to come in. She just sat down on the porch step and said she wasn't here to fight. Inside the envelope were paper scraps, not junk. Receipts, old bank slips, sticky notes with scribbles I recognized instantly. Copies of checks I'd written over the years. Some of them I didn't even remember anymore. Rent money, vet bills, a back-owed transfer labeled, "For the deposit, please. Thank you." There were at least a dozen different handwriting samples, most of them hers. Laura said she'd been cleaning out her apartment because she was planning to leave the state. Maybe Colorado, or maybe back to Florida, where one of her old roommates still owed her a favor. She said it casually, like geography was a personality trait. Then she said something strange. She said she thought she messed everything up. Not just with me, with everyone. She went quiet after that. Looked like she wanted to cry, but couldn't decide if I'd care. Then she told me something that stopped me cold. She brought up the back-owed transfer from 2021. The $500 I gave her when she said she was about to get evicted. She admitted part of it went to paying off a man she'd been seeing, a married man. He'd threatened to leak photos she sent him. She said she was too embarrassed to tell me. She thought she could fix it herself without dragging me in. She couldn't. I stood there in the doorway, not sure what to say. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I couldn't tell if this was the first time she was telling the truth, or just the most convincing version she'd tried so far. Then she said she wasn't asking for money. She said she just wanted me to know she was sorry, that she wouldn't bother me again. She left the envelope on the porch and walked back to her car. She didn't look back. It should have felt like a turning point, like maybe this mess could still be untangled, like confession plus time could equal forgiveness. But before I could even process it, something else snapped into place, something colder. Later that afternoon, I got an email from a bank I didn't recognize. Subject line said they needed confirmation on a personal loan application. Verification of identity required. When I called, the man on the phone told me someone had applied using my information. The email on the application was slightly off. One number switched, just enough to slip through. He said it was flagged because some of the documents looked photocopied. I already knew who it was. An old W-2. That's what it had to be. One I emailed Scott years ago when he needed proof of income for some startup he never followed through on. That realization broke something in me I didn't even know was still intact. I filed the fraud report, locked every account, changed every password, froze my credit. Then I made sure his name was flagged in every single financial system I could access. It felt surgical, cold, precise, and long overdue. Then I made one more call. His old landlord. I didn't lie. I just told the truth. Said Scott had left damage behind at his last place. Said he'd tried to secure a new lease using someone else's information. She sounded tired, but grateful. She said he'd already missed the first utility setup deadline. She said she knew he was all talk. I told her we all did. It just took me longer. I thought that would be the worst of it. I thought that was the breaking point. I was wrong. The next day, an unknown number from Mexico lit up my phone. I almost ignored it. I figured it was spam or a wrong number. It wasn't. It was the school nurse at my daughter's school in Merida. She said my daughter had listed me as a backup contact. They hadn't been able to reach her mother in over 48 hours. My ex-boyfriend had apparently left town with his new girlfriend and left my daughter with a neighbor who then left for work and hadn't come back. I couldn't speak for a few seconds. My brain stalled. The nurse said she didn't want to scare me, but it wasn't a good situation. She said she thought I should come. I packed a duffel bag, drove straight to the airport, bought the first seat I could find to Mexico City, then connected to Merida. I didn't text anyone, didn't tell work, I just left. Halfway through the layover, Scott texted me, "You're seriously going to ghost your whole family over money?" I didn't answer. Then another message. "Mom's freaking out. What's happening to this family?" I typed a reply, deleted it. I had bigger things to worry about. My daughter was alone in a country I had no legal custody rights in, and not one of them had ever asked how she was doing. In that moment, all the anger I'd been carrying started to change shape. It wasn't loud anymore. It was sharp, focused. I wasn't finished. I was just switching targets. I landed in Merida just after midnight. The airport was quiet. A few taxis, a few families waiting. I didn't check a bag, just my passport, a backpack, and one goal: get to my daughter. The nurse had given me the address of the neighbor who'd been watching her. It was on the outskirts of town in a neighborhood I didn't recognize, the kind of place where streetlights feel optional, and houses blend into each other like they're trying not to be seen. I paid the cab driver extra to wait while I knocked, because I didn't trust the idea of being stranded if something went wrong. She was asleep when I found her, curled up on a couch in a house that smelled like dust and old cooking oil. The neighbor was a man in his 50s who barely spoke English. He looked just as confused and overwhelmed as I felt. He said her mother had gone to Cancun for a few days with a friend. Then she stopped answering her phone. He said he didn't know what to do. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I thanked him, scooped my daughter up, and carried her out into the night, like if I moved too fast, the moment would disappear. She woke up just enough to wrap her arms around my neck. She didn't ask why I was there. She just whispered that she missed me. I told her I missed her too. We went straight to a hotel. Nothing fancy. Clean sheets. A door that locked. I sat on the edge of the bed and watched her sleep like I was trying to memorize her breathing. That night, I didn't think about my family. I didn't think about Scott or Laura or my parents scrambling to fix what they'd broken. I thought about how close I'd come to losing something that actually mattered. We stayed there 4 days, just the two of us. I took her to the beach one morning. We ate mangoes with sticky fingers, churros dusted in sugar. Walked through markets where she tried to translate signs for me like she was the adult and I was the tourist. At night, we watched cartoons in Spanish and laughed at jokes I didn't understand. It was the first time in over 3 years I felt like a mother instead of a backup plan. On the 5th day, my ex finally texted, "Everything okay?" That was it. No apology, no explanation. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked into the small law office the nurse had recommended and asked what my options were: custody, neglect, anything that would put something official on paper. I knew the odds were bad. Different country, different laws. But I wasn't leaving empty-handed without trying. Back in the States, everything was falling apart without me. Scott's new lease had been revoked. The leasing company emailed, asking if I wanted to pursue fraud charges. I told them I was considering it. Laura posted a selfie with the caption, "Some people will never love you if they can't use you." I almost laughed. My mom sent a long message, paragraphs and paragraphs about how I was changing, how I was acting out of character, how bitterness was poisoning the family. She said they were all willing to forgive me if I just stopped being so cruel. I stared at it for 10 minutes. Then I replied with one sentence. "I forgave all of you 100 times. You just called it responsibility." Then I turned off my phone. When I flew back to the US, I had one plan: a clean break. I canceled everything still in my name, every subscription, every autopay, even the $5 cloud service my mom used to store recipes. I called the phone company and split Laura off the family plan. I deleted every shared folder, even the one with my dad's tax documents. Let him figure it out. Scott showed up at my job the next week, walked into the warehouse like we were old friends, sunglasses on even though it was cloudy. He tried to pull me aside and said he wanted to talk woman to woman, said I'd made my point and maybe it was time to stop. I told him I wasn't done, not even close. He called me petty, vindictive, said I was ruining things for no reason. And then I said something I didn't plan to say, something that came out sharp and final. I told him he was never family, he was just an expense. That shut him up. He stood there for a second, then walked out without looking back. That night, my mom called again. Voicemail. She said she didn't know who I was anymore, that I was scaring her with how cold I'd become, and for the first time in my life, I felt something like peace, because I finally knew who I was, and it wasn't their wallet. A month passed. Silence settled in like it was testing the space, seeing if it would be allowed to stay. My phone stopped lighting up. No more half apologies. No more guilt wrapped in friendly language. No passive-aggressive posts that were clearly about me, but pretended not to be. The family group chat went dead. It was the quietest my life had been in years. I got approved for visitation rights in Mexico. It wasn't full custody, not even close. But it was something. My daughter could visit for holidays. Summers, eventually, if everything went right. I started fixing up the spare room in my place, pulled out boxes I'd never unpacked, painted the walls yellow because she said it felt like sunshine. I bought her a desk. The first real piece of furniture I'd bought for anyone but myself in years. I still wore the same jeans, still drove the same truck, but the air felt lighter, like I wasn't dragging an invisible weight behind me everywhere I went. That's when they tried one last time. The message came from Laura, short, polite, almost professional. She said they wanted to meet as a family one last time, no drama, just to clear the air. I didn't respond. 3 days later, my mom sent a letter, an actual envelope with her handwriting on it, like it was 1998 again. Inside was a photo of all of us from 10 years ago, smiling, sunburned, pretending nothing was wrong. The note said, "Before all this, please let's talk." I stared at it longer than I should have. Then I got in my truck and drove over. I didn't tell them I was coming, I just showed up. They were all there. Mom, Dad, Laura, Scott, sitting like they'd rehearsed it. Scott tried humor first, called me the prodigal wallet. I didn't smile. Mom said they understood now that things had gone too far, that I needed space, but we were still blood. That should mean something. I let them talk. Every excuse, every revision of history, every version where they were confused victims instead of active participants. Then I spoke. I told my mom she never protected me, that nodding along while Dad dismissed me wasn't neutrality. It was choosing him. I told my dad I wasn't his backup plan or his safety net. I told Laura she used people like furniture and expected praise for returning them when she was done. I told Scott he was a leech, not even a clever one. Then I said it. The thing I regretted the second it left my mouth. I said they weren't my family. They were just people I grew up with. The room went still. My mom looked like she'd been slapped. Laura stood up. Scott muttered something about me being unstable. I didn't stay to hear the rest. I walked out without saying goodbye. On the drive home, guilt crept in, that hollow ache that makes you question everything. I thought about calling my mom, softening it, offering some version of peace. But I didn't, because this time the silence wasn't abandonment. It was freedom. 3 days later, I blocked them all, not out of anger, out of necessity. I chose my daughter. I chose myself. I chose a future without chains made of obligation and guilt. 2 weeks after I blocked them, a letter arrived. Certified mail. No return address, just my name written in tight cursive on the envelope. For a moment, I thought it might be legal trouble. Maybe Scott trying something stupid again. I almost didn't open it. Inside was a check. $3,800. Folded once. No memo line. Just a short note torn from a notepad. Sold the couch. Sold the necklaces. This should cover some of what I owe. Don't expect more. I'm not trying to fix things. I just don't want a debt hanging over me. It wasn't signed. It didn't need to be. I recognized Laura's handwriting, the tone, half apology, half defense, completely on brand. I left it on the kitchen counter. 4 days it sat there. I walked past it making coffee, past it on my way to bed, thought about tearing it up, thought about mailing it back, thought about whether it was bait or guilt or just self-preservation. Laura never returned anything. Not money, not favors, not borrowed clothes. And now she was selling her things just to balance a scale she'd spent years pretending didn't exist. On the 5th day, I deposited it, not because I needed the money, because I wanted to know how it felt to take something back, something I never thought I'd see again. Nothing dramatic happened, no wave of relief, no satisfaction, just a quiet understanding. This wasn't reconciliation, it wasn't redemption. It was closure, in the only form this family knew how to offer. That night, I sat in my daughter's half-finished room and imagined her there, her books on the desk, her shoes by the door, a life that didn't require me to disappear so everyone else could be comfortable. I didn't win. Not in the way stories usually frame it, but I survived. I set boundaries. I chose love that didn't come with conditions. And for the first time in years, I could breathe all the way in.